hold on. I've got alligator arms. Okay. I'd like to call to order the May 27th, 2020 Brooklyn City Board of Education regular meeting. We need to appoint Mr. Rocky Neal as the treasurer pro tem. Mr. Neal, can you call the roll?
Mr. Roper.
Here.
Mr. Sanger.
Here.
Mrs. Barcheck.
Here.
Mr. Slattery.
Here.
Can we
Mr.
all
Neal.
stand for the
Here.
pledge? I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Resolved that the minutes of the May 19, 2020 Board of Education meeting be adopted and all action taken by the Board of Education at said meeting is hereby reaffirmed and approved. Can I have a motion, please?
Motion.
Second.
Questions, comments? Mr. Neal, can you call the roll?
Mr. Roper.
Yes.
Mr. Sanger.
Yes.
Mrs. Barcheck.
Yes.
Mr. Slattery.
Yes.
Mr. Neal. Yes.
Resolved that the Brooklyn City School District Board of Education hereby approves granting limited contracts for the 2020-2021 school year to the teachers named below. Compensation and/or steps to be determined by negotiated agreement as noted. Can I have a motion, please?
Motion.
Second.
Second. Questions, comments?
Your typical yearly limited contracts, these are one-year limited contracts, doing these before obviously June 1st, so.
Thank you. Mr. Neal, can you call the roll?
Mr. Roper.
Yes.
Mr. Sanger.
Yes.
Mrs. Barcheck.
Yes.
Mr. Slattery.
Yes.
Mr. Neal. Yes.
And this is resolved that the Brooklyn City School District Board of Education hereby approves the May 2020 5-year forecast. Can I have a motion?
Motion.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Questions, comments? Dr.
Yeah,
Wyckoff, do you have something for us?
Yeah, I'll take that for you. In front of you is a copy of the 5-year forecast that Mr. Hoskin prepared. I know that he shared a copy of this with you back, I think about a week ago as well. Of course, I'm not gonna go through this with detail, but I would bring you to the last page, which is, the actual forecast itself. Because I think there's a couple of items there that are of note there. If you look at unrestricted grants in aid, which is fourth line down, 1.035, in there is reflected the state cut from the foundation for fiscal year 20. And again, just a reminder, that is $216,000 that the state took from us this year due to COVID-19, some of the state reduced revenues that they had. What Mr. Hoskin then forecasted for FY21 in that same line represents a 10% reduction. So he's expecting that we are going to be forecasted down a little bit. And again, I think we're the projections for FY20, in his words, are based on the simulations provided by House Bill 66. Also in this category are casino revenues, calculated at $52 per resident student attending Brooklyn City schools in fiscal years 20 through 24. And there's a reduction in the per pupil amounts due to the closing of the casinos. So if you recall, obviously with COVID-19, casinos were closed, so that also reflects that. When you look at the benefits, which is employee benefits 3.020, you're going to notice there that an increase, our premium rates this past year increased 4.2%. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
And that's, obviously relative to being in the Suburban Health Consortium and so forth. Now, as you look to next year, he's projected an increase by 18% in FY21, and then 10 and 9 subsequently. And a lot of that is due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Health insurance and health benefits, that's a big concern, and I think he's talked about that with some of the other Suburban Health Consortium folks. If you move down on that same expenditures there, 3040, supplies and materials, there was an additional preschool classroom that we added in January, so there's $7,500 there. additional maintenance equipment replacement costs, some bus parts increased for the couple that were still running. Custodial cleaning supplies increased. Given COVID-19, disinfectant, safety-related supplies. You know, I've just talked with Mrs. Neal today, and you know, many of those masks came in that we needed for our cleaners. So, those are some of the expenses that all districts right now are taking upon because of the supplies necessary due to COVID-19. Now, the FY21 expenses have been reduced by $390,000, where they have been expended using CARE funds as a grant through the state. So some of that we're able to charge off to the CARE funds that we received from the state. Now, we got $390,000, but I think it was $350,000 that the district received. I think $40,000 of that was passed through to our non-pubs. And then transfers out. So if you look there, 5010 in the other financing uses, you're going to notice some increase there. The closing of school on March 13th, obviously due to the COVID-19, reduced the sale and participation in the school breakfast and lunch programs. As we all know, the district now had to transfer $62,000 of our dollars to the food service fund to make up for that deficit. Additionally, funds will need to be transferred from the district's preschool, before and after care programs to cover the loss of tuition payments. So again, that's where CATS comes in and allows us to cover the cost of tuition payments. Again, because of the closing due to COVID-19, you don't have preschool, you don't have dollars coming in. So there's a lot of these that shows you some of the impact that, you know, the COVID-19 closure, even just over 3 months, has had on the budget. I think, though, if you look at it, you know, at the end of the day, there's two numbers that I look at as superintendent, and that is certainly, line 6010, the excess of revenues over expenditures, meaning at the end of this year, right now, we're projecting it to be $716,000 to the good. That's optimistic. That's really, really good to see. And then obviously the unreserved fund balance, if you look down in 2024, we're still in a positive number there at the end of 2024 with $2.6 million. So given everything that has happened, we're still in a good light. Again, as all districts right now, next year is a big question. We haven't gotten clear direction from the governor just yet, ODE. I'm actually going to talk a little bit about that in other business because I think there's 2 items. But that kind of wraps up kind of the highlighted portions of this.
Thank you. Anyone else? Any questions?
I did share an article with the board on a certain school districts, and similar, they're all in the same scenario. It goes from having $11 million to having $4 million. So, we're up against the wall, all of us.
Who was it, Independence that you said?
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's kind of surprising.
Yes.
Yeah. It's what we're up against.
Anyone else have any questions or comments? Very good. Mr. Neal, can you call the roll?
Mr. Oper,
Yes.
Mr. Sanger.
Yes.
Mrs. Barcheck,
Yes.
Mr. Slattery,
No.
Mr. Neal, yes.
Any other business?
Yeah, I had 2 things I left with you there. I wanted to share a document that I received end of last week. I've talked about what the governor's, he's had draft guidelines. It's a PowerPoint. And reopening Ohio's K-12 schools, employment considerations for school districts. This is a great resource. I'm providing this to our administrators here. I think the item, obviously we're still waiting for more information from the governor and ODE, but this is a great reset. I particularly like, I think in summary, on the 3rd page, the 3rd window down there, return to school consideration. They really look at 4 areas that school districts need to consider: health and safety and related logistical considerations, educational considerations, social emotional health considerations, and then the operational considerations. And so those are things that all of us as school districts really need to take into account. That first part, though, the health and safety related logistical stuff, is like the next 4 pages. There is so many different things that kind of right now we have to juggle in terms of health related and logistics that it is kind of, it's mind boggling right now. So those are the things that, you know, as I've shared with you, we're making multiple plans and the scenarios based on what that is. So I thought this was a nice document for you guys to take a look at as the Board of Education. And certainly a document that I'm sure that your next superintendent will be looking at closely. The second document that I wanted to share with you is summer recommendations from OHSAA. So as we shared before, OHSAA has said, hey, you know what? This week we'll let people start training again and conditioning again. Well, okay, that's all well and good, but there's a lot of things that go into that. And so I shared with you what Mr. Verba shared with me just this week. I think this is interesting because it's almost like a template for what I just spoke about. And you can just imagine the health regulations when you're talking about young athletes, you know, conditioning, lifting protocols, yada, yada, yada. There is a lot of things that have to be mindful of. And even this document speaks about phasing in how you're going to do this. So I've asked Mr. Verba to take a look at this. I've asked, well, he's taking a look at it, and Mr. Hare to really come up with a game plan of how we phase in this for our schools and for our teams and our athletes. So, you know, that's a critical point. And so there's going to be some recommendations that certainly he is going to provide me and I'm going to provide you in terms of that. And, you know, some of those are critical, like, you know, what are we going to do with, you know, our facilities? Are we going to open those back up? You know, for example, you know, we talk about the stadium and that. And I know right away, our initial recommendation is that the facilities really should just be open for our athletes only. And why do I say that? Because how are we going to be able to reinforce protocols with just people coming into those places? But at least we can with our coaches. So I know that's one of the things, that's just one of the many details that we have to vet through. So he and Mr. Hare are going to have kind of some recommendations in with that. I would expect some sort of start date of like June 8th, where we really can begin to do this in earnest. Because it's the crafting of that, it's communicating of that, and it's also getting that out to our coaches. Which really brings the next piece of, you know, liability with coaches. You know, will coaches be apt to just say, hey, you know, you want to lift, and, you know, you got to follow the protocols there. So, you know, we're expecting to put on our fall coaches, you know, really for June. So if you recall, we really only have one coach in the fall under contract so far. So, you know, just our head football coach. So, you know, coaches obviously are going to probably be a little bit hesitant about, hey, I want to start bringing kids into lift, I need to be hired, and so forth. So we want to be able to, I'm expecting those recommendations for our June 16th meeting from Mr. Verba. But I think we also probably have to put some caveat language in there, because we haven't heard definitively from OHSAA what's fall sports going to look like. And so I think we need to identify that and work with our union on that to say, hey, you know what, if Jim's the coach and, you know, we're not going to have that sport, or that team's not going to play, what are we going to do about that? You know, I know we made a decision in terms of spring supplementals, but do you want to still do that in the fall when we can kind of prepare for that? So that would be something that I think we have to work on and put some language together, even if we do the approval of our coaches come June 16th. So look for me to provide you as the board some recommendations in terms of how we phase in this program, because this is going to be critical.
Just something I seen on here, it says phase 1, gathering should not consist of more than 10 people at a time, inside or outside, to include all participants and coaches. So does that mean like sports are going to do a sign up for the gym for certain periods, and like, I mean, it's going to be quite a...
If they continue with that, you're right, think about it. And this again is conditioning. So certainly what that means is, conditioning out on the field. You're only going to have 10 groups of 10, and that's coaches included. Makes sense for the weight room. I would think the number would even have to be smaller than that because you'd want to have almost a 1-to-1 or a 2-to-1 ratio there. And certainly our weight room is large, but it's not that large where you're going to want to be able to put too many in there. So, yeah, there is some really strict guidelines in terms of that.
Yes.
What about, our children are still going to require a doctor's certificate that they can participate?
Absolutely,
And-
yeah.
And has that been looked at? Because I know some doctors' offices still refuse to see patients.
Well, I mean, that's a liability thing, Mr. Singer, and I think we have to, that's just a baseline. I mean, if a child doesn't have a physical, they're not going to be able to practice.
Right.
I mean, that's in typical and normal times. I would think it's even more imperative now. So I think hopefully if student athletes are considering playing a sport in the fall, they're really trying to get into their doctors now.
I'm probably dating myself, but when I played, they actually had the doctor come here, and we got in the locker room, boom, 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 physical.
There was a time when we used to do that, Mr. Slater.
That doesn't
You're
happen
absolutely
anymore?
right. Yeah, I don't know why we've gotten away from that, but we used to do it at a very nominal cost for our athletes.
Well, it was cheaper for the parents actually, and it was easier for the coach to make sure everybody was done
Yeah.
instead of waiting for.
It wasn't a whole lot of examination either.
No,
Yeah,
no,
it was.
touch your toes, cough, kind of a.
We
That
did
was
do
it.
that. I recall that because I remember when I coached girls volleyball, we had that, and it was like sign up, do it here, so I know that you're all set and ready to go for the fall. But
Okay. Anyone
that's all
else?
I had for tonight.
I just have one thing.
Sure.
This was donated to the school by Harry McCormick for the trophy case when, he knew that we were going to, there's been discussion about revamping it. It's a football signed by Rick Tricano when he played for the Browns, and also a hat signed by him when he went to the University of Pittsburgh. So we're gonna turn this over to the school today. We appreciate it, Harry. I think almost everybody sitting here knows or knew of Rick Tricano, so it's kind of neat having somebody that made it all the way through the ranks, through college to the pros. So we will gladly accept this and put this in a trophy case when we have the opportunity. So thank you.
What year
Thanks,
did he
Rick.
graduate? Anyone know?
Rick was 77,
It was late
Yeah.
70s,
right?
77,
He was with
78.
Kenny Laurie. Kenny.
I have one caveat. That's great. I'll
Yes,
take
that's
that, and I appreciate that, and I'll bring that to the athletic office. I just was informed from Mr. Verba, we still do the mass physicals.
I was gonna say, I thought we still did. I didn't want to say
But
anything.
they're not offered right now because of COVID-19. We do them through
still did.
UH, so you're not dating yourself.
Okay, well, I just knew they were cheaper for, I want to say, even when my kids played sports, it was like $20 or $25. I'm not setting the price. $20 or $25. It was
Yeah.
very reasonable.
Anything else?
Nope.
Result that the Brooklyn City School District Board of Education recess into 5 consecutive executive sessions for the purpose of: 1, considering the appointment, employment, and compensation of a public employee official; 2, considering the employment, dismissal, and discipline of a public employee official, as well as the investigation of charges and complaints against a public employee official; 3, considering the employment, dismissal, and discipline of a public employee official, as well as the investigation of charges and complaints against a public employee official; 4, preparing for and reviewing negotiations and bargaining sessions with public employees concerning their compensation and/or other terms and conditions of their employment; and 5, conferences with an attorney for the public body concerning disputes involving the public body that are subject to pending or imminent court action. All matter discussed in these consecutive executive sessions are designated to the public officials and employees as confidential pursuant to RC 102.03B. Because of the status of these proceedings and/or the circumstances under which the information will be received and preserving its confidentiality, it is necessary to the proper conduct of government business. Can I have a motion, please?
Motion.
Second.
Mr. Neal, can you call the roll?
Mr. Oper,
Yes.
Mr. Sanger,
Yes.
Mrs. Barcheck,
Yes.
Mr. Slattery,
Yes.
Mr. Neal, yes. 6:20.
Did we need to say that are we doing any business afterwards? We sure we're not doing anything? Okay, the board will not be having any business after we recess out of executive session. We will just be adjourning. Thank you.